September 22nd, 1992, Las Vegas, Nevada. $500,000. Gone in one night. And the strangest part? The thief didn't break in. He walked out, through a side door, carrying a black duffel bag, while the cameras watched someone else. Bill Brennan was a cashier at the Stardust Casino sportsbook. A quiet man, 34 years old, lived alone with a cat named Booger. On September 22, 1992, he walked out of the biggest sportsbook in Las Vegas with $57,000 in cash and over $280,000 in casino chips. And then he vanished. But this isn't just a story about a casino theft. It's about a man who studied how to disappear, a shady gambler who whispered in his ear for a year, and a book on a shelf that told him exactly how to vanish forever. One cashier, one blind spot, $500,000, and 33 years later, the FBI still has no idea where he went, or if he's even alive. This is how an invisible man robbed the most famous casino in Las Vegas and became impossible to see. To understand Bill Brennan, you have to understand the Stardust. The Stardust Casino opened on July 2nd, 1958. At the time, it was the largest hotel in the world, 1,600 rooms, a casino floor covering 16,500 square feet. And for the next 2 decades, it operated as the center of the largest casino skimming operation in American history. The man who ran it was Frank Rosenthal. They called him Lefty. He was a professional bookmaker with connections to the Chicago outfit. He supervised the theft of millions in unreported casino revenue. Cash was skimmed from the counting room before it ever reached tax authorities. Couriers carried bags of money to mob bosses in Chicago, Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Kansas City. Sound familiar? It should. His story became the basis for the film Casino. Robert De Niro played him. In 1983, a federal grand jury indicted 15 people. Frank Rosenthal was banned from Nevada casinos for life. In 1985, Boyd Gaming purchased the Stardust. The mob era was officially over. The casino became corporate, but certain things did not change. The money still flowed. The workers were still disposable, and the sportsbook remained the most important in Las Vegas. Frank Rosenthal built the Stardust Sportsbook in 1976. It was the first legal sportsbook inside a major Las Vegas casino. By 1992, it set the opening betting lines for every major sporting event in America. Bookmakers across the country waited for those numbers each morning. The operation handled enormous volumes of cash. On NFL Sundays, hundreds of thousands of dollars passed through the betting windows. Monday Night Football generated massive action. A single bettor might wager $11,000 to win $10,000. Payouts of $21,000 were routine. Security procedures were strict. Cameras covered every inch of the floor. Multiple employees verified each transaction. At the end of each shift, cashiers sealed the takings in a duffel bag for transport to a central counting room. The money was never supposed to leave anyone's sight. That was the rule. And for decades, it worked. So how did one quiet cashier beat a system built by the mob? William John Brennan was 34 years old in September 1992. He had worked at the Stardust Sportsbook for 4 years. He processed bets. He paid out winners. At the end of his shift, he prepared the takings for transport to the counting room. Scotty Sheetler was the sportsbook director who hired him. He described Bill as reliable, accurate, good with numbers. Richard Saber was a manager who worked alongside Bill. He remembered him differently. He was basically a total, complete loner, Saber said. Bill lived alone. His only companion was a cat named Booger. Bill lived in a residential motel called the Convention Center Lodge on Desert Inn Road. His apartment was modest, 1 bedroom. He drove an old Nissan. He had no girlfriend. The apartment manager, Judy Pope, remembered him as just a nice kid. He paid rent on time. He never caused problems. Bill worked the late shift. He clocked in at 6 in the evening. He clocked out at 2 in the morning. After work, he drove home. He ate dinner alone. He watched television. The next day, he did it again. For 4 years. Think about that. 4 years of the same routine. 4 years of handling money that belonged to other people. 4 years of counting cash he would never own. Co-workers later tried to remember something about him. Anything. A hobby, a favorite meal, a story he told. They came up empty. He showed up. He counted, he paid, he went home. He was, in every sense that the casino measured, the perfect employee. Which was exactly the problem. Because the perfect employee is also the perfect ghost. The man who attracts no attention attracts no suspicion. The man who never makes a scene is never watched closely. Bill Brennan had spent 4 years teaching the Stardust not to see him. And then, something changed. In 1991, Bill applied for a promotion to supervisor. Scotty Sheetler denied it. Bill's attitude had changed. He said Bill had been influenced by outside sources. Sheetler no longer trusted him. So who was the outside source? The outside source was a gambler, a big bettor. The casino did not know his name. He appeared at the Stardust sportsbook sometime in 1991. He placed large wagers. He lost often enough that the casino tolerated his presence, but the staff noticed something. The gambler spent time talking to Bill Brennan, not casual exchanges, real conversations, extended discussions at the counter and during breaks. Other employees noticed Bill's demeanor changing. He seemed agitated. He complained about the casino. He talked about being passed over. He said management did not appreciate him. The gambler encouraged these complaints. He told Bill the casino was cheating him. He told him the system was rigged against workers. He told him that men in suits got rich while cashiers lived on minimum wage. Richard Saber watched the friendship develop. This was a bettor we didn't trust, Saber later told investigators. He was a shady character. There were rumors about the gambler's background, connections to people the casino preferred not to know. Saber warned Bill directly, "That guy is going to get you nothing but trouble." Bill did not listen. Sometime in 1992, Richard Saber visited Bill's apartment. They were co-workers, not close friends, but Saber was curious about the man everyone ignored. The apartment was sparse: a bed, a television, a cat. But Saber noticed something on a shelf, a book. The title was How to Disappear Completely and Never Be Found. The book had been published in 1985. It was a guide to starting over. Chapters covered planning a disappearance, arranging new identification, finding work under a false name, avoiding detection. The author had interviewed people who had successfully vanished. Saber noticed the book. He said nothing. It did not mean anything at the time. It meant everything later. Bill knew the Stardust sportsbook better than anyone. He knew the procedures, the schedules, the security. He knew his supervisor took a 45-minute break each night. During that window, Bill was alone in the cage with access to the shift's takings. He also knew the corridor from the sportsbook to the counting room had a weakness. The surveillance cameras were old, installed during the mob era. The coverage was basic. There was a gap, and near that gap, a side door led to the parking lot. It was not alarmed. If someone walked through that door instead of continuing to the counting room, no camera would record them leaving. Did Bill discover this alone, or did someone tell him? Because in the summer of 1992, the big bettor stopped coming to the Stardust. He disappeared without explanation. The casino assumed he had moved on. Richard Saber noticed the timing. He disappeared from the face of the earth too, Saber said, just a few months before Bill had gone. Whether the gambler helped Bill plan the theft or planned to take the money from Bill afterward, no one knows. Both men vanished. Neither has been seen since. The plan was set. The cameras had a gap. The side door had no alarm. Bill had a book on his shelf that told him exactly how to vanish. He had clothes packed, a cat ready to travel, and one last shift to work. Think a quiet cashier could really outsmart the FBI, the Las Vegas police, and the entire Stardust security team? Drop your prediction below, and subscribe because what happens next has never been explained. September 21st, 1992, Monday night. The New York Giants are playing the Chicago Bears. The game is broadcast nationally on ABC. It is the third week of the NFL season. Gamblers across America are watching and betting. At the Stardust Sportsbook, the betting windows are crowded. The handle is massive. This is one of the biggest betting nights of the year outside of the Super Bowl. Cash flows through the cage in enormous volumes. Bill Brennan clocks in at 6 in the evening. He is reliable, as always. He takes his position at the counter. He processes bets. He pays out winners. He does his job. At 7:30, he jokes with a coworker. At 10:15, he logs a routine chip count. At 11, he takes his scheduled break. 10 minutes, half a cigarette. He returns to his station. Everything is normal. The Giants beat the Bears, 27-14. The game ends. The betting windows close. The sportsbook begins counting the night's takings. 12:50 in the morning, September 22nd, 1992. Bill receives the shift's takings. The count is complete. The total is $507,361. Approximately $225,000 is in cash. $20 bills, $50 bills, $100 bills. Approximately $280,000 is in casino chips, high-denomination chips that can be exchanged for cash at the cage. The money weighs approximately 11 pounds. Bill checks the pre-count. Everything is in order. He places the cash and chips in a regulation Stardust duffel bag. Black. Standard issue. He seals the bag. He attaches the security tag. He signs the log confirming he has taken possession. His hands do not shake. His face does not change. 4 years of practice have trained him for this moment. A second employee watches him complete the procedure. This is standard protocol. 2 sets of eyes on the money at all times. The employee sees Bill pick up the bag. He sees Bill walk toward the corridor that leads to the central counting room. He does not see what happens next. 1:11 in the morning. Surveillance footage shows Bill Brennan walking through the corridor. He passes the vending machine. He passes a bank of payphones. And then something almost goes wrong. A coworker appears at the end of the corridor, a fellow cashier, heading in the opposite direction. The 2 men are about to cross paths. If the coworker stops to chat, if he asks a question, if he walks with Bill to the counting room, the entire plan collapses. Bill keeps walking. He nods. The coworker nods back. They pass each other in silence. 5 seconds later, Bill is alone again. He approaches the section where the cameras have a gap. He does not reach the counting room. Investigators later determined what happened. Bill turned left. There was a side door in the blind spot. It led to the parking lot. The door was not alarmed. Employees used it regularly. No one questioned a man in work clothes carrying a duffel bag. He was doing his job, moving money from one place to another. That's what cashiers did. Bill walked through the door. The night air hit him, dry, warm. Las Vegas in September. Somewhere inside the building, a supervisor was finishing paperwork. Somewhere, a guard was watching a monitor. Somewhere, a camera was pointed at a corridor that no longer held Bill Brennan. He crossed the parking lot. He got into his car. Did he take a last look at the Stardust? Did he hesitate? Did his hand shake on the ignition? No witness ever saw him. No camera ever caught him. Whatever Bill Brennan felt in those final seconds, he took with him. By 1:33 in the morning, Bill Brennan was driving away from the Stardust Casino with over $500,000. No alarms sounded. No guards pursued him. No one knew the money was gone. 2 in the morning, Bill's shift ends. The money was supposed to be in the counting room by now. A shift supervisor calls to confirm the deposit. There is no record of it. The supervisor checks the logs. Bill signed out the bag at 12:50. He never signed it in. Security is alerted. They pull the surveillance tapes. They watch Bill walk down the corridor with the duffel bag. They watch him approach the camera blind spot. They watch the footage after the gap. He does not appear. They rewind. They watch again, frame by frame. Bill enters the gap. Bill does not exit. The Stardust calls the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. Metro Fraud Division responds. Lieutenant Joe Greenwood takes the case. He was supposed to turn in the money at about 2 in the morning, Greenwood told reporters the next day, and at 1:30 he was observed in the hotel. At that time, we believe he was leaving. Officers are dispatched to Bill's apartment, the Convention Center Lodge on Desert Inn Road, a short drive from the casino. They expect to find him inside, panicked, drunk, ready to surrender. The door is locked, the lights are off. When they enter, they find nothing. When police entered Bill Brennan's apartment, they found it clean and orderly. The bed was made, the furniture was intact. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of panic. But there were gaps, empty spaces in the closet where clothes had hung, clear drawers where belongings had been stored, a quiet absence where a cat should have been. Bill had taken Booger with him. On a shelf, police found a book that Richard Saber had noticed months earlier, How to Disappear Completely and Never Be Found. The pages were worn. It had been read carefully. Beside the book, investigators found other materials, travel guides to Central America, pamphlets about countries with no extradition treaties with the United States, handwritten notes referencing banks in the Bahamas, prepaid phone cards that could not be traced. This was not an impulsive crime. Bill Brennan had been planning to disappear for months, perhaps years. The theft was the final step in a process that had begun long before September 22nd. He had studied how to vanish. He had prepared his exit. He had packed his belongings in advance. He had even made arrangements for his cat. And then, he had walked out of the Stardust with $500,000 and executed his plan. So how do you catch a man who studied how not to be caught? The FBI was called under the unlawful flight to avoid prosecution statute. Bill Brennan became a federal fugitive. His face appeared on wanted posters across the country. He was featured on America's Most Wanted. Tips came in, hundreds of them. Someone claimed to have seen Bill in Arizona. Another insisted he took a bus to Mexico. A third reported seeing him in Canada. A fourth swore they served him coffee in a diner in Oregon. None of the leads produced results. Investigators checked Bill's bank accounts. No activity after September 22nd. They monitored his family. Bill never contacted them. They watched for credit card transactions. There were none. They checked for plane tickets in his name. Nothing. Bus tickets. Nothing. Rental cars. Nothing. His old Nissan was found 3 weeks later, abandoned, wiped clean. No fingerprints, no receipts, no sign of where he went after he stepped out of it. The location of the car told investigators almost nothing. It sat in a long-term lot on the edge of the city. Hundreds of vehicles passed through that lot every day. No attendant remembered seeing Bill. No camera had captured his arrival. Whoever parked that Nissan had timed it perfectly, or had help. From the long-term lot, Bill could have walked to a bus station. He could have met someone with another car. He could have boarded a private plane at a small airfield outside Las Vegas. He could have done a dozen different things. Investigators ran down every possibility. None of them produced a single witness. Investigators interviewed everyone who had worked with him. The staff at the sportsbook, the neighbors at the convention center lodge, the cashier at the liquor store he visited twice a week. They all said the same thing. He was quiet. He was polite. He never talked about himself. Agents searched for the gambler too. They had no name, no photograph, no address. Just descriptions from casino workers. A man in his 40s, medium build, heavy bettor, seen with Bill for almost a year. And then, sometime in the summer of 1992, simply gone. They ran the description through mob intelligence databases. They checked known associates of the old Chicago outfit. They looked for anyone with a history of casino scams. Nothing matched. The gambler was a ghost. And Bill Brennan was a ghost who had taken lessons from a book. Bill had done exactly what the book instructed. He cut all ties. He created no paper trail. He used no cards. He called no one. He disappeared completely. But if he did everything right, why can't we shake the feeling that something went wrong? 3 theories emerged to explain what happened to Bill Brennan. Theory 1. Bill got away. He followed the instructions in the book. He obtained false identification. He moved to a country with loose banking regulations and no extradition treaty. He started a new life under a new name. He is still alive today, living quietly somewhere with his cat and his money. If this theory is correct, Bill Brennan would be 66 years old. Supporters of this theory point to the preparation, the travel guides, the notes about the Bahamas, the pamphlets about Central America. A man who plans that carefully rarely fails. And the timing of the theft, right after a massive Monday night football weekend, meant maximum cash on hand. He had picked the biggest night of the month. Theory 2. Bill was murdered. The gambler who befriended him was connected to organized crime. He manipulated Bill into committing the theft, planning to take the money for himself. After Bill walked out of the casino, the gambler met him somewhere in the desert. He killed Bill. He buried the body. He took the cash. Richard Saber believed this version. "I don't think Bill Brennan ever left this city," he told investigators. Saber pointed to the timing. The gambler disappeared in the summer of 1992. Bill disappeared in September. If the gambler was waiting for the final payoff, The desert outside Las Vegas offered endless places to hide a body. The Nevada desert has never given up most of the people buried in it. The gambler has never been found either. If he killed Bill, he covered his tracks as thoroughly as Bill covered his. Theory 3. Bill had inside help. Someone at the casino assisted him. A security guard who looked the other way. A supervisor who disabled a camera. The conspiracy reached beyond a single cashier. This would explain how Bill knew about the blind spot. It would explain how he escaped so cleanly. It would explain why a man with no criminal history suddenly pulled off one of the cleanest inside jobs in casino history. The casino denied this theory. The investigation found no evidence to support it, but the Stardust had a long history of corruption. Skimming, mob ties, quiet deals between employees and outside interests. If anyone had reason to doubt the casino's innocence, it was the investigators who knew its past. All three theories have the same fundamental problem. There is no evidence to prove any of them. What we know for certain is this. A man walked into work at 6 in the evening. He did his job. He sealed a bag. He walked down a corridor. And somewhere in the gap between two cameras, he stopped being Bill Brennan and started being a question that has lasted more than 30 years. In 2006, the United States Attorney's Office in Nevada dismissed the case. The statute of limitations had expired. Whatever Bill Brennan did on September 22, 1992, he could no longer be charged for it. If he walked into an FBI office tomorrow and confessed, they could not prosecute the theft. The Stardust Casino closed the same year. On November 1, 2006, it shut its doors for the last time. On March 13, 2007, the building was imploded. Thousands of people gathered to watch. The famous neon sign was donated to the Neon Museum. Today, Resorts World Las Vegas stands on the site. A different casino, a different era, a different name on the marquee. But the ghost of Bill Brennan remained. His name is still on file with the FBI. His wanted poster still exists in old federal archives. The case has never been officially closed, just quietly shelved. The active search ended long ago. Bill Brennan remains the only person to successfully rob a Las Vegas casino from the inside and never be caught. The Stardust Casino operated for nearly 50 years. During that time, it took money from gamblers who believed they could beat the odds. It took money from the government through decades of unreported skimming. It took from its workers through low wages and denied promotions. In 1998, carpenters at the Stardust won a labor dispute with Boyd Gaming. They had gone 11 years without a raise. The National Labor Relations Board filed a complaint on their behalf. 11 years, no raise. The casino made billions. Bill Brennan worked in that system for 4 years. He was a cashier. He handled hundreds of thousands of dollars every night. He was accurate, reliable, invisible. The casino did not see him as a person. They saw him as a function, a pair of hands that moved money from one place to another. When he asked for more responsibility, they said no. When he made friends they did not approve of, they warned him it would cost his career. On September 22, 1992, those hands moved the money somewhere else. There is something unsettling about the Bill Brennan case. It is not the crime itself. $500,000 is significant. But casinos lose more than that to advantage players and accounting errors every year. It is not the method. Walking out a side door with a bag is not sophisticated. What unsettles people is the disappearance. The casino could not find him. The Las Vegas police could not find him. The FBI could not find him. America's Most Wanted broadcast his face to millions of viewers. No one turned him in. Not a neighbor, not a coworker, not a family member. Not a stranger in a diner somewhere who thought the quiet man at the counter looked familiar. The man who spent his entire adult life being ignored became, in the end, impossible to see. There is a strange lesson in that. The casino built its security around the assumption that a thief would try to stand out. Someone would run, someone would panic, someone would make a scene. But Bill Brennan did the opposite. He blended in. He followed every procedure up until the final second. He used the skill the casino had trained into him, the skill of being invisible, and he turned it into a weapon. The money was never recovered. The casino chips were never cashed, not one of them. Somewhere, in a desert or a bank vault, or the bottom of a drawer in a house no one suspects, $280,000 in Stardust chips still exists. Chips for a casino that no longer stands, issued by a company that no longer owns them, signed out of a cage that was imploded in 2007. The case was dismissed. The building was demolished. Bill Brennan walked out a door and into history. Or into a grave in the Nevada desert. Or into a small town somewhere with a cat and a new name and $500,000 that no one will ever find. We do not know which. We will probably never know. Somewhere, an old man may be sitting on a porch in Central America right now, reading a newspaper, feeding a cat. If he is who we think he has kept his secret for more than 30 years, and he will almost certainly take it to his grave. Or perhaps the grave came first. Perhaps the desert holds the answer. Perhaps the truth was buried on September 22nd, 1992, along with a quiet man who trusted the wrong friend. Either way, the Stardust is gone. The cameras are gone. The corridor is gone. The side door is gone. And somewhere, Bill Brennan, or whatever he calls himself now, is the only person alive who knows what really happened in that blind spot. Every year, the FBI receives a handful of tips on the case. An old man in Costa Rica who fits the description, a recluse in a fishing village in Belize, a stranger in a small American town who pays cash for everything and never opens a bank account. Each tip is logged, each tip is checked. None of them have ever led anywhere. The book Bill kept on his shelf, How to Disappear Completely and Never Be Found, is still in print. It has been reissued multiple times. Every so often, someone buys a copy and jokes about using it. Most of them never do. Most of them have families, careers, names they cannot bear to leave behind. Bill Brennan had none of those things. A one-bedroom apartment, a used car, a cat, a job that treated him like furniture. He read the book, he followed the book, and the book worked. Whatever else you think about Bill Brennan, remember this. For more than 3 decades, a cashier from a casino that no longer exists has outrun the FBI, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, the Nevada courts, and a nationally broadcast manhunt. If he is alive, he has won. If he is dead, he has kept his silence. Either way, the blind spot won. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and activate the bell button so you can receive new videos.